Hello. Hello, police. Yeah, what's the problem, sir? We just drove down our farm track. Yeah. Go and feed our pheasants. We come across a Range Rover with 3 people in it. Yeah. It appears that they're dead. I don't know what's happening. Blood in the motor all over them.
And welcome back to a new video on the Essex Boys case. As always, if you are enjoying the content, please do give the video a thumbs up. And if you're interested in the Essex Boys case, or simply true crime in general, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. Now, before I start this video, it's important for me to mention that the author does not seek to discredit any previous accounts or versions of events leading up to the gruesome murders. He merely offers an interesting alternative scenario to be considered. The Sunday after Pat Tate had parted with 100 grand, they were due the first payment to Canning Town. They blew it off. No call to make an excuse. They would get to the old gits later. Fuck 'em was Pat's view for the moment. Monday morning, they were in Steele's home, and Tate was his usual menacing self, suffering from an almighty hangover and come down from a 36-hour binge on pills, booze and coke, which had started on Friday after Tony had given back a large chunk of cash from the sale of the rubbish weed. The only reason Pat Tate was just about in check was the ecstasy pills. The little pills had gone out in the clubs over the weekend, and the reports coming in from the clients were amazing. All the dealers used themselves and everyone had been off their faces on the pills. Tate now had a foot stuck firmly in each world. On the one hand, his man had supplied the best ecstasy pills they'd ever had from all reports, and he'd had a couple himself on Friday, so he knew they were the dog's bollocks. On the other hand, they had a boot full of shit weed on its way back with one of the foot soldiers to be delivered to Mickey as soon as they'd left the premises. An important man from East London had been given his money back, and several smaller dealers who owed on other products as well were refusing to pay any money owed and complaining bitterly of loss of revenue, and most importantly, loss of face. Sell shit gear to the wrong person, and it's not always just a case of giving the money back. The product may no longer exist. Some of it is obviously consumed in the testing process. The friction can go from a simple "never mind, I'll get you some better stuff next time" to "I have lost money, business and credibility. Money back ain't sufficient. I want compensation. And guess what? The money I owe you for the coke and the pills, well, you can get fucked. You ain't getting paid." It all depends on the individual customer concerned. If it's just a mug punter in the club, the former option is the usually expected outcome. If it's a customer of substance and credibility, then the second option is much more likely, especially if they are buying in quantity for resale. The way the issue is handled is very important. If Tucker makes a stand then backs down, it's a sign of weakness. So he has to gauge who he is dealing with and how much aggravation he wants. Does he want to do business with the client again? Are they important to him? If he takes them on, will they be a serious threat? Ultimately, he is in the wrong, as he is supplying rubbish. Being wrong is always a disadvantage. Tucker moved quickly and dealt with the bigger players in the best way he could, before it escalated and a stand was made, which would be difficult to back down from and impossible to save face and reputation if he did. Tucker did the sensible thing. He offered compensation and to make right with a quality product in the future. It had cost him, but it was the sensible thing to do. It left him with several problems. He now had a pile of shit gear on his hands which he couldn't give away, so Mickey was getting it back. The profit from the pills had been good, but was exhausted making right the weed problem. He hadn't paid Canning Town, which was next on the list. He'd get to it later, he told himself. The meeting with Steele was touch and go for the branch team at Romford listening in. They had some of it from the mobile telephone sitting on the side of Steele's kitchen. They had followed the developments with the drugs over the weekend. Tate had raged on occasions, but he had been partying heavy. Tucker had kept himself in better shape and had been dealing with the situation as best he could. Craig Rolfe had been by Tucker's side throughout the mess. It was as much his problem as Tony's. At least that's what he told Tony. But in truth, it wasn't. But it was his way of keeping himself in the picture. especially as Tate had suddenly become the golden child and he'd started to feel a little bit vulnerable. Tate had told Tucker he would kill Steele if he didn't give up his Dutch contacts and make things right. Tucker was the level head on the firm. His presence gave the team the only slightest modicum of comfort. There was no point killing Steele at this juncture. The damage was done, and Tucker needed to make things right. Killing Mickey Steele would immediately put a line through any chance they had of getting things sorted sensibly. Neither Tate nor Tucker had any line on the Dutch end of Steele's operation, and without him they are unlikely to ever get anywhere fast looking for it. If they by some remarkable feat ever managed to get to Holland on their own and identified a supplier, or suppliers, as two products could mean two sources, then the weed supplier would simply say the gear they sold to Steele was good. Mickey must have double-crossed them. If he was dead, then not a lot of people could contradict the story. It wasn't rocket science, and the unanimous verdict of the team in the second-floor office in Atlanta Boulevard on Sunday, which had them all at their desks, was Steele was safe for the moment. No need to send in the cavalry, to spoil what could be a good source of intelligence. Though no one actually said it, there was a strong possibility of Tate doing something stupid and putting the man in hospital. But it was never mentioned, so the Monday meeting had them all set up for a live gig. They were hooked up live on all the mobile phones of the three visitors. It turned out to be Steele's mobile sat on the side and plugged into the charger, which picked up most of what was said. Tate growled at first, then he settled down. Steele sounded cool enough, although he probably didn't look it, but then the team only had the audio on the meeting. The suppliers of both products was the same firm, an old acquaintance he trusted. Mickey couldn't understand why the weed had been so shit, but it could be resolved no problem. More pills, no problem. But he would need more money. Steele would set it up. He would arrange a meet with the Dutchman, and they could all come and meet him. It was clear from the audio that Steele would try to dissuade Tate from meeting his Dutch contact. Mickey obviously wanted to protect his supplier, keep his own position in the play solid. The trouble now for Mickey is that he had lost the high ground. He was either with Pat Tate and his friends, or with the Dutch outfit and maybe in on the scam. Steele did his level best to calm Tate down and assure him he was on their side. The only way he was going to sell that one was to let the Essex firm come on the meet with a Dutchman. The Dud gear had screwed him, and he knew it. Mickey said he would set up a meet as soon as possible. Would they be okay to go to Holland? Tate would go anywhere was the reply. No way out of it for Mickey. Mickey Steele said he would speak to his Dutchman and sort it ASAP. There was just no other way forward for him. Tate, Tucker and Rolf left Steele's home. He said he would be in touch very soon, and that there was no problem in order to get more pills, but they would need to pay up more money. Tate immediately growled at the suggestions. Tucker said, "Mickey, I'm a businessman. Things happen, but we can work through this." Okay, our three Essex boys are on their way. No one has stayed behind. Got all the mobiles on the move together, and Steele is stationary at home. Bartholomew was watching the tracking system overlaid on the map of the area on his larger-than-average computer screen. He was the only one who wasn't wearing a set of headphones in the office. The mobile phones let the networks know where they were, and with the extra tweak from the world best spy masters, the branch men were able to watch the movement of any mobile device they wanted around the streets of Britain. It was Pac-Man for grown-ups, watching a bunch of devices do their lefts and rights around the electronic displayed road maps. Well, that's a relief, gentlemen. I bet Mr. Steele was glad to get through it unscathed. Okay, so we need to try and stay on Steele and get a lead on a Dutchman he's working with. D.I. Ellis leant back in his chair with a look of genuine relief. It was one thing having all the technology and listening into the regular daily lives of the county's criminal underworld and not running around to the local Nick every 5 minutes asking for the regular boys in blue to pick up and charge one or all of the scumbags, but listening in on someone getting murdered, or as good as, when they knew there was a possibility it might happen, and then letting it happen, well, that went too far for the whole office. They all knew it individually, Bill reckoned, even if it was not said collectively. Ultimately, they were law enforcement officers and could not condone the murder of a likely lad and rogue like Steele, no matter how big the picture or long the game. D.I. Ellis had held his nerve, and rational thought had prevailed. Tate was unpredictable, but Tucker had the sensible head, and for now he was calling the shots. D.S. Handley's analysis of the firm was pretty spot on. D.I. Ellis had to agree. Handley was right. Tate was unpredictable and could become a real problem if Tucker lost control of him. Tate wasn't so unlike some of the other characters on their watch, and highly likely to go overboard and seriously hurt someone for the merest of slights, as had the maniac over in Raynham a few times. Nicknamed Paul by the team, the biggest problem with Paul was that when he was on one of his benders, for no apparent reason, he would just lose the plot, get something in his head, and do serious harm to a random person, who for whatever meaningless reason had pissed him off. The team had heard a few incidents historically on the tapes, and they sounded gratuitous and definitely unprovoked. Listening to it after the event, there was nothing they could do to prevent it. The local boys, along with the ambulance and medics, dealt with it as best they could, always long before the old Bill ever got anywhere with it. The victim would be aware of the menace of Paul and his pals, and no statement would be forthcoming, and the injuries would heal in time. So the old Bill never got anywhere with the prosecutions. The team consoled themselves in the fact they had no idea it was going to happen, and material they had was only audio. Yes, they had technology, which could place the offender at the scene if he tried to argue he wasn't, but it was never going to get that far. So there really wasn't anything that they could do on those instances. Just build their intelligence data, and one day, he would get picked up, and something worthwhile would stick. Then he would lose it all and get to grow old in a cell. This was the best consolation they had for the impotence on the random unplanted events of gratuitous violence by any character on their watch. However, knowing Tate was visiting somebody who he could easily convince himself had made a complete fool out of him in front of his new friends, and into the bargain had robbed them of a large sum of money, was another matter. If they thought life was in danger, they had to act. They had to pass on sufficient intelligence to the local boys and have intervention if life was at risk. It would have saved Steele had they done so on that Sunday. Tate might have a few problems for a short while. Tucker and Rolfe would soon walk as soon as the lawyers showed. It wouldn't put an end to the Essex boys, and Steele might change town. In effect, it would achieve bugger all in the long game the team were playing. So they had run what they all agreed was a small risk for a bigger picture. Steele may have had something to say about it, but he wasn't being asked. It all turned out okay, and Steele was still in business with the Essex boys, by the sounds of things.
You've been listening to the book Once Upon a Time in Essex. This book is available to purchase online at Amazon and other online book retailers. Many thanks for joining me for this video. Very shortly you'll be able to see some other videos from the channel, including the Essex Boys playlist, which has all of the videos concerning this case in one convenient folder. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. I look forward to seeing you all again in the next video. Take care. Cheers.